Welcome in to the Dynasty After Party. My name is Michael Sicoli. You're going to be with myself and Joel Wirth real soon. What a day we've had for football, and what an amazing week we've had for football. And you have the two best people to talk about it. My team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, haven't lost yet. They're still in the playoffs. They're in there longer than the Dallas Cowboys. And the team that beat those Dallas Cowboys, well, Joel is a big fan of those Green Bay Packers. We're going to be talking about the playoff games and then jumping into all of those big head coaching moves. Who's going where? Who do we think will go where? And what will be the dynasty impacts of all that? So we're going to get into all of that in just a second. And here we are, Joel. Here we are. It's the first weekend of playoff games. And you are fresh off, and I mean fresh off, a drubbing of the Dallas Cowboys. How are you doing today, Joel?
The youngest team in the playoffs since 1974 has Sean Clifford in garbage time against the hated Cowboys. So, yeah, let's go, baby. Let's go. Now, so for people who are like under the age of, say, 35, they don't understand the hatred of the Cowboys that like longtime Packer fans have. They don't understand that the games that we always had to play in Dallas in the early 5 years and how Michael Irvin never, ever got called for pass interference when he was pushing off all the time.
So my Giants fan father says every time.
Yeah, so like the young Packer fans, like they think we just own the Cowboys. We don't like this. So this has been beautiful. I'm a little hoarse, as you can tell. I've had a lot to celebrate today. There's been a lot of touchdowns.
Yes, you have. I believe the Packers are now 6-0 in playoff games in AT&T Stadium, something insane like that. It's
6-0 all time in that building.
Wild, and just a perfect semblance of what Dallas has kind of been in recent years. And we're going to be talking about those coaching changes coming in. Full disclosure, we're going to be talking about Dallas. We're going to jump the gun on that one because Mike McCarthy is getting the gun himself in Dallas. There is no way he survives to next week as the Dallas Cowboys head coach. But first, we did have today's playoff game, and we had two games yesterday. I want to get some quick dynasty reactions from you, Joel. Let's start with this game, the game we just had, and the man of the game. If it's not Jordan Love, which it could have been, it could easily be Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones, 3 touchdowns, over 100 yards on the ground. Fantastic player, has continued
in 3 quarters.
Yeah, in 3 quarters. And he continues to look great. He just wasn't really on the field this year. And he's going to be turning 30. You imagine he's back with the Packers. He's going to be such an interesting dynasty player to watch this offseason because in 6 months, nobody's going to want him.
He will absolutely be back with Green Bay. I mean, Brian Gutekunst earlier in the year said he is the heart and soul of this team, and he absolutely is. So they will. I mean, he's got a big cap hit, but they'll renegotiate. He took a pay cut this year. He loves being there. They're going to make something work. So he's absolutely going to be back. They're going to draft someone. He's probably not going to be he's not going to have only A.J. Dillon for competition for carries. But like I wrote yesterday that the injuries that he had this year, like really set the offense back early, but they've really kept him fresh. I mean, he has been the best running back in the league like the last month since he came back full time. So yeah, I mean, he looks every bit as good as he has at any point in his career. And they've really kind of milked him, kind of sandbagged him. Like they just never really given him a full workload. So he's going to be like 29 next year. He's going to have as fresh legs as you can expect for a 29-year-old to have. So yeah, I don't think he's dead dynasty value at all.
Yeah. And yet I think that's what the perception is going to be, right? Is because we always forget how it is at the end of the year here. We might look at the stats and say, wow, he did this, this, and this, but it's different when you see him doing as much as he's doing right now. And he's gashing the Cowboys left, right, and center. So I do think he is going to be a very undervalued player and somebody that's probably worth a buy when we get rolling into that March time when they draft that next guy, because A.J. Dillon was the plan, and that has not worked out. So they are going to draft.
I think there may be some overreactions to the injuries and the fact that they are going to draft his eventual replacement. There's no question. And they're probably going to draft him high, right? It's probably they've got 5 picks in the top 100. They're going to spend one of those on a running back. So because they need an heir apparent. But yeah, so I think he's going to be someone that competitive teams should absolutely be looking to put on their roster at some point.
Yep, you're dead on with that one. If we go over to last night's game, KC against those Miami Dolphins that do not play in the cold. I don't know which one you want to touch on first, but there's two things I want to talk about from this game. One is obviously Rashee Rice, new Dynasty darling, analytic darling. I had no idea really what to make of him as a prospect. I didn't really have much of an opinion one way or another, but he has been sensational over the last couple months even. He has really found his form, popped off last night. I'm curious on how high you're becoming on Rashee Rice. Are you buying in to Rashee Rice?
I liked him coming into the year. I liked him coming out of SMU. It took a while for Andy Reid to kind of realize that he was as good as he was. I mean, maybe, we're not in practice. We don't know. Maybe it just took that long for him to kind of show that he deserved that kind of role. But, coming down the stretch, he has been their number one receiver ahead of Travis Kelce. He's been kind of the best player on their offense, outside of Mahomes, obviously. And he's been literally their only reliable receiver. I mean, everyone else has been a disaster. Yeah, I would expect them to add to that room, but I think he's going to be the number one going into next year because, I don't imagine they have the cap space to kind of go out and get. People talk about T. Higgins. I don't see that.
They're going to get priced out.
He's going to get too much money from somebody else. Somebody else is going to be able to poison pill a contract that Kansas City can't match. So, yeah, I don't see that. Yeah, I think they're going to have to try and draft someone to be the second receiver. And, do you want to count on a rookie to kind of take over that role? So I think he clearly goes into next season as the number one in that offense.
Yeah, and it's, a lot of things are suggesting that we're seeing the start of that downturn for Travis Kelce in the last few months. And we have, he's turning, 35 next year? Yep. At some point the wheels have fallen off and they're starting to buckle a little bit, those wheels. If wheels could buckle. I don't know if wheels can buckle. But either way, Rashee Rice, certainly a great dynasty option for the years to come in KC. Last one I want to talk about, or I mentioned there were two things I want to talk about. The other big overreaction people are having right now, and I don't know if it is, Tua Tagovailoa, right? Before, in middle of the game, people are calling for the Dolphins to draft somebody. Some people calling for Mike McDaniel's head. Where are you at with Tua, and do you think he's still a quarterback that we should be wanting in Dynasty?
So Tua is one of those guys.
Extra context, sorry, I should have added this as well. He is going to be playing next year on his fifth-year option. So naturally, if the Dolphins are committed to him, you would see extension talks begin and an extension be finalized this offseason. But after last night's game, you have 1 year left with him on the fifth-year option, $23 million, or possibly more than that. 1 year left under contract.
So, Tua is one of those guys who my opinion hasn't changed on, but the market has just gone sine wave on him, right? It's everybody was out on him in the preseason because of the concussion issues. And then when Tyreek was, on his way to a 2,000-yard season, everybody thought, Tua was a top 8-ish quarterback. I mean, people clearly had him above Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence and guys like that. I mean, that was obvious that was where he was in the market. And now things have kind of slowed down in December, and now the market is out on him again. So I think he's a back end quarterback one, but other guys have passed. Jordan Love has clearly passed him.
Yes,
guys like that. Brock Purdy has clearly passed him, I think. So yeah, he's going to be an interesting case. I think he kind of starts where he belongs, where he's going to end the year kind of where he started and where he belongs, which is kind of a back end QB1.
And so to that question, this is a big one that Dynasty Superflex managers have to manage. Do you think he gets extended this year, or do you think he plays it down in the fifth-year option?
I think they probably do an extension next year. I doubt they extend him this year. I think they'll want to see more before they give him a big money extension.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Now, last game that we had, Texans obliterate the Browns. Joe Flacco returns to Joe Flacco form. And here we are. Here we are with this team, this Texans team with no Tank Dell, just dominating all facets of the game. Will Anderson, a beast on the defensive line. Nico Collins, a beast on the outside boundary. And CJ Stroud, the king of it all. How high is too high for CJ Stroud, or is there no such thing?
So a peek behind the curtain, I'm writing the kind of early offseason quarterback overview right now. And I was going to say, full disclosure, I was going to say I think CJ Stroud is probably overrated, just because where he's legitimately kind of going after that first tier of Mahomes, Allen, Hurts. He's going ahead of guys like Burrow and Justin Herbert and Lamar Jackson. He's going ahead of those guys in some cases. And so I was going to say there's just no way he can keep up that draft position, but I may be wrong. I think he may just be that good, which is kind of scary to think about.
I am so ready to ride and die on this train of I will take him over the 2023 MVP Lamar Jackson. I think right now I will take him over Justin Herbert. It gets closer when we're talking about Josh Allen because of the rushing upside, and then you have Mahomes obviously with just his talent, but he's right there with Burrow for me, and I can easily make the argument of taking him over for Burrow. Of Nico Collins is still going to be there, Tank Dell's still going to be there. He's going to come back next year.
They could add a receiver,
and Burrow's going to lose T. Higgins. He might lose Tyler Boyd. You have another injury that he's dealing with. And C.J. Stroud just looks unfreaking believable. First rookie quarterback to win a playoff game since 2009. Now, that was Mark Sanchez, who didn't exactly have a storied career from there. But I think we expect bigger things from C.J. Stroud. Yeah, so for me, he's right in that top 5 quarterbacks. I'm willing to take him as high as 3. I am drinking the Kool-Aid. And to our last episode of resolutions, be sure to check that one out at Club Fantasy FFL. We mentioned being okay with buying players high if we have every reason to do so. And I think CJ Stroud is an example of that. We are seeing it in front of us. This is not outliers anymore. This is not crumbling in one game to make you question. This is continued brilliance by a young rookie quarterback in Houston.
Yeah, what was the number they put on the screen yesterday where it was, highest touchdown to interception ratio and whatever in a season, and the only 2 guys who were with him were Tom Brady and Joe Montana, like literally the 2 best quarterbacks of all time. So yeah. So,
and another reason not to helmet scout if you try to project your quarterbacks, because previously Ohio State could never produce a quarterback, right, Joel? And that is a load of nonsense. Now, we're going to get to the actual meat of the show here. Be sure to follow Club Fantasy NFL on Twitter, Instagram, all the amazing stuff. And obviously on YouTube, if that's what you're watching right now. Be sure to subscribe, hit that bell, all those amazing things, Club Fantasy FFL. Now, we have an array of teams that need a head coach. I'm going to let you, and I'm throwing Dallas into the mix here, Joel. I genuinely want to talk about Dallas's next head coach because Mike McCarthy is gone. Which team do you want to start off with first?
Let's start with Dallas.
Let's do it.
They become
Mike McCarthy has been fired.
you are 100% certain he's going to be fired.
I am willing to stake my entire fantasy football career on
it. I think it's about 25%. I'm not as certain as you are, but I'm still pretty sure he will. I don't think Jerry Jones is going to let an opportunity to hire Bill Belichick go. So I very much think that he will be the coach there. Probably.
There's too many good
maybe
candidates.
Tomorrow.
This is a fantastic group of coaching candidates this year. It's not always this good of guys with previous experience, and we have guys with previous experience. We have the up and comers. There is such a wide range. You have proven guys of Steve Wilkes, and not Dan Quinn, but a lot of good options out there. Obviously, the Jim Harbaugh lottery that people are going to be trying to play, and we know Jerry has the pocketbook to do whatever he wants to do. So. And he will do it for his Dallas Cowboys. So I'm so confident Mike McCarthy's gone. Who do you think steps in? I think we're both on the same page that we think Belichick is going to be the next.
I think that is where he ends up. That is where now at this point with them getting destroyed today, I think that's where he ends up going.
Does that mean Matt Patricia jumps in as the offensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys for next year?
We'll get to this when we talk about the Jerod Mayo hiring. I think the biggest problem with Belichick the last couple of years, obviously, besides the complete inability to draft, is the kind of nepotism on that coaching staff and the kind of inbreeding on that coaching staff that he just hasn't been willing to get rid of, whether it's just loyalty to him or for whatever reason, he just has been completely unwilling to kind of bring in some new voices and to challenge him. So I think it's got to be a condition of his hire that he lets those guys go and brings in, some kind of new voices to, like I said, to challenge him and to bring some new ways of thinking.
And if you read the stories out of New England this past week, which has obviously been detailing and breaking down the insides and outs of the Bill Belichick departure from New England, a lot of it was around the Mac Jones pick was right around the time that Belichick started to cede some of that power of he wasn't listening to his scouts. He started listening to his scouts with Mac Jones. The scouts like Mac Jones. And obviously we saw how that played out. And, he started losing a bit of his power and the Patriots kind of went down with it. So I do think that we're going to see more of that inbreeding in Dallas, honestly. I think he's going to bring people in that are familiar with him. And I think he's going to bring in, we're going to see Nick Saban calling offensive plays in Dallas. But either way.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, listen, we don't know who's going to end up calling the plays yet in Dallas for the offensive side. Obviously, it wouldn't be Bill Belichick, but let's quickly talk it through of whenever we see Belichick, we typically know we're not getting a workhorse running back. And that is how Dallas has really worked it for the last 10 years of run it down the throat with Zeke or run it down the throat with Tony Pollard and then hope that CeeDee Lamb beats you over the top. And are we going to still see the same thing after not seeing anything on offense from the Patriots for the best pass of 3-5 years?
Little bit of a difference in talent between the two offenses, right?
A little bit, yeah. There's a little difference.
Lamb, Pollard, Ferguson. Yeah. Dallas is in an interesting spot in that they probably need a second receiver to take some pressure off of Lamb.
That'd be an amazing crew gator. That's a hell of a point right there.
Yeah, that would be crazy. I don't see Pete Carroll taking a coordinator job. That would be interesting. Dallas needs another receiver to take some pressure off of Lamb. I really think they do because Brandon Cooks, like early in the season, they didn't really need anything just because they were destroying inferior competition. But you can't. CeeDee Lamb's got like 100 targets at home this year or something like that. That's insane. They need a secondary option. They need a back to take some pressure off Tony Pollard. He can't be a full-time back. That was obvious this year. Does he even come back? Right? He's a free agent. He may not come back. So. They may go after a Saquon Barkley. They may go after a Derrick Henry. They may go after a Josh Jacobs or something like that. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Bill Belichick and Derrick Henry on Dallas. Who would have saw that 2 years ago? But anyway, let's move on to another team here. We just mentioned it just now. Seattle moving on from Pete Carroll, who is moving into an assistant role, advisor role, still with the Seahawks, not in coaching capacity. And honestly, I think it's very unclear about what his role actually is now. But either way, he's not technically fired, but he is not the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks anymore. And that coaching position is open to pair with general manager John Schneider, who is staying in place. Who ends up in Seattle? Because my original thought was potentially Dan Quinn. And I don't think he's getting many looks anymore.
I'll push. I think this was Dan Quinn from the go, and I still think he's going to get. You're not going to define a guy's career based on one bad game, right? So at least they shouldn't. Dan Quinn's been a really good coordinator. He was a very good head coach in Atlanta. Yeah. Just it wasn't his fault that they lost that Super Bowl. That was more Kyle Shanahan. I mean, he's obviously in charge. He probably should have put his foot down, but he's one of those guys who was a good head coach, will learn some things from taking time off and take those into his second job. I think he's 99% to get that job, and I think he'll do a really good job there.
I was deciding between, I do agree that I think they lean on the defensive side here of a head coaching hire. I think they're going to stick with something they're very comfortable with. And I do think I was deciding between Vrabel and Dan Quinn for my slotting to Seattle here. I think Vrabel could really get the most out of a lot of those guys in Dallas or in Seattle, excuse me. And that just seems like a very, again, I think we're on the same path, though, with those two guys. Both guys with head coaching experience in the past, both with a defensive background, and both that would probably be hiring offensive coordinators that we'll be talking about this offseason that will have to manage a three-headed monster at receiver of the question of whether Tyler Lockett's back and what are you going to do with Zach Charbonnet, who you spent a second-round pick on, and what do you have in Geno Smith? A lot of
that's
questions.
the big question, right?
A lot of
What are you
questions.
going to do with that guy? Because he was not good this year, and
No, he was not.
Frankly, as as good as he was for fantasy last year, he wasn't great as a
he was.
real life.
Let's not do that, Joel. He was excellent last year.
They made the playoffs. Yeah, he was better than expected, but yeah, that's got to be an open question, right? He doesn't have a very impressive contract, so what do they do there? They probably draft.
And that's why they tailored
Penix in the Northwest.
Yeah, that's why they tailored the extension that way. Is because they had 1 foot on the train and 1 foot off, and this gives them the option to do that once again this year. They could stick with the Geno train if this head coach wants them, and they can move on if they don't. They still have some picks from that Denver deal, I believe. So it's a good situation that Seattle is in. It's an appealing spot, one of the best landing spots I imagine for head coaches of a pretty stable ownership that has proven that they're willing to ride with a coach, a general manager that has drafted pretty well in over the course of his entire career, honestly, with John Schneider. And, you have a lot of good skill position pieces. So it's not a bad situation. I think we both expect I expect Vrabel. I expect Vrabel or Quinn. You expect Quinn. So I think that kind of wraps up Seattle there. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum here. The least appealing job, in my opinion, at least. Oh, Carolina. No first-round pick, right? All right, we have no first-round pick. You got what is Bryce Young. Of whoever's taking this job has to work with Bryce Young. That has to work out. That's a given. You have no skill positions. You have a annoying owner who you cannot trust worth your salt, who has already fired several head coaches in the same season. But you have money. You have money to work with. You have that hedge fund money. So what happens with Carolina? Who do you think Carolina tries to land?
I mean, it's kind of interesting in that they really need an offensive guy there because they need someone to develop Bryce Young. Like that would be a spot that you would really want Ben Johnson, but Ben Johnson turned them down last year. Is Tepper willing to go back to him and try and get him back? That doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would be willing to do that. So, but the big name coaches that are out there are really kind of defensive guys, like we've been saying, the Quinns and the Belichick's. Yeah. So if they want to make a splash, it's going to have to be on the defensive side. So, yeah, I'm not sure where they go. Like you said, they've got money to spend, but they're probably going to have to because it's a terrible situation, right? Like I said, they gave away the 101. They don't have any receivers. They have a terrible offensive line. And you need to build an offensive line in front of Bryce Young because he needs to be protected. He needs a wall in front of him so he can kind of see over the top and create space for him. So you need a lot there. That's probably a several-year rebuild. Like the Packers have shown, if you do it right, you don't have to take that long. But when you kind of gave away the assets that you did to get Bryce Young, that didn't turn into CJ Stroud. Now you're really in trouble.
Well, surely they got something worthwhile for DJ Moore, right? Something equal in value. No, they didn't. They could use someone like DJ Moore, couldn't they? But yeah, listen, you mentioned him, and honestly, that's what I think is going to happen. I think it is going to be Ben Johnson, despite him spurning them last year. It did come out that was the guy that Tepper wanted. Tepper wanted Ben Johnson as his first choice, and I think he's going to unload the Brinks truck. I think he is going to pay him so much money to take this job in Ben Johnson because you're right. It has to be an offensive guy. They have to work with Bryce Young, and there's just not a lot of options out there. There aren't a ton of great young offensive options. You have Clint Kubiak in San Francisco as a potential option. That's actually who I think lands with the team that we're talking a little bit later. I don't think anyone's jumping after Arthur Smith right now.
No,
as
I
the
don't think
QB
so.
whisperer. I don't think so. So that I think he's just going to pay. I think Tepper's going
Is
to
that a
pay.
Harbaugh spot?
Harbaugh's got his pick of the litter, and he's got his pick of the litter, and he ain't care
Yeah,
about it.
I agree. I don't think he's going to.
He does
I
not need
don't
money.
think that's the place he's going to want to go.
Yeah, I do think he goes to a certain spot that, again, we're going to talk about in a little bit. But either way, and congrats to your Packers, the score became official around 5 minutes ago, and you are now the first 7 seed to win in the NFL, and you are also on to the next round of the playoffs.
Hope you took the over. Wow, 80 points.
I don't even know how the Cowboys got back to 32 somehow.
Because the Packers took their starting defense off basically after the first drive of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that'll do. That'll do. Either way, if it is Ben Johnson, let's just quickly touch on that. How much do we like that for fantasy? I gotta imagine that is the best case situation.
Best case scenario, yeah. I mean, it's the best of a bad situation. I would much rather. We'll get to another team. I'd rather see him go to a place that has some weapons where he can do some good. We'll see. That would be the best case scenario for Carolina.
Are you calling Terrace Marshall not a weapon?
Terrace.
He's so bad. I can't stand him. Let's move on to Atlanta. Once the division leader, now out of the playoffs, Arthur Smith out of the picture in Atlanta. Now, with Atlanta, you get that Bijan Robinson, you get the Tyler Allgeier, you get the Kyle Pitts, you get the Drake Londons. You got a good defense there with a well-coached Ryan Nielsen-led defense, but you don't have a quarterback. You do not have a quarterback. Who ends up the coach in Atlanta, or who would you want to see the coach be Atlanta?
Is this the most attractive opening for a coach?
I would say no, but I'm
yeah, okay.
I'd say no. I'd leave it for do I spoil my thought on what the best landing spot is?
I think we'll get there. I think this is the most attractive spot just because of the weapons that you have. You have a top 10 draft pick that you can probably get like a Jaden Daniels or something like that to be you can probably move around to get yourself a quarterback.
It's my second most, by the way. I'll throw it out. It is my second most. It's close between them and someone else, but I do have someone
You've got an owner who is pretty hands off on the football operation, wants to win, is willing to spend money to win. I could see this being a Harbaugh spot. I would really like this to be a Ben Johnson spot because that would be insane. That kind of creativity with that kind of talent. Yeah, exactly. But the organization's got to take some of this blame here too, right? They are the ones who were willing to go into a season with this trio of talent and put it on the back of Desmond Ridder, who like literally everyone and their brother knew was not it. So that's got to get fixed. But yeah, once you get that quarterback, this team could be scary. So I'm going to say this is the most attractive. Like you said, this is a pretty good defense. They went out and spent some money on the defense this year. They got Grady Jarrett. They got Jesse Bates. And they've got a good offensive line. So this is an attractive spot. And now, I very much want them to get an offensive guy because I have a lot of Drake London shares. I have a lot of Kyle Pitts shares. I don't have a lot of Bijan shares. I got a few, but yeah, we need this to go to the next level.
My gut tells me it will be an offensive guy, even though my brain tells me Vrabel could be a really good spot here as well as, again, another accomplished name. But it does feel like Arthur.
That would be interesting for Vrabel to follow Arthur Smith, his former offensive coordinator, to that job.
It'll be really funny. But that means Johnny Smith's returning. But either way.
No.
It's interesting because I don't know what offensive coordinator I want to see here outside of Ben Johnson, right? And I don't know. Do we see Bobby Slowick here? I think that's the name I'm going to throw out here. The Texans offensive coordinator. I think that's who would land this Falcons job because I think they have so much faith in Ryan Nielsen, a defensive coordinator, that they just don't need a defensive head coach. They have just so many more questions on the offensive side of the ball that even with an offensive coach last year, they weren't able to figure it out. So I do think they go back to that side of the ball. And ultimately, we know it's going to be great for fantasy no matter what it is because it really can't get worse than what they had this year.
Slowick's a guy I hadn't really been considering just because it's like his first year as an OC, but
for sure.
Going to be following in obviously kind of behind Mike McDaniel in that kind of role. He had that kind of role in San Francisco, and then with D'Amico Ryans in Texas. And offense looked pretty good yesterday against a really good Cleveland defense. So yeah, he may be positioning himself to get a head coaching job after his first year as a coordinator.
It's just he's got the most out of Nico Collins that other coaches haven't. He's got the most out of a rookie in Tank Dell, a rookie in C.J. Stroud. He's made Devin Singletary viable for the first time in his career, really. It's hell. We saw Brevin Jordan. We saw Brevin Jordan have his moments. He's not good. He's not good at all. And listen, you know, I've been so impressed with what the Texans are doing that I think if Ben Johnson doesn't end up in Atlanta, I think Bobby Slower will. But let's move on to another option here. Different ownership with Josh Harris in Washington, and that is a big difference for coaches considering Washington, not having worked with Dan Snyder, instead working with the new, fresh Golden State background of the personnel they're putting in. They're bringing they're bringing NBA people into the front office over there when Josh Harris situation with the 76ers owner. But Washington inherits an interesting situation of who's your quarterback? You probably don't have it unless you're really in on Howell. You have an aging Terry and really not much else. This is not a great team talent-wise, but they still have their picks and they're picking fairly high. So what are you expecting for Washington?
So they did just hire Adam Peters from San Francisco to be their GM.
Right.
So does he go after Bobby Slowick because the narrative there is going to be the kind of the 49ers shared background. So that would be interesting. I feel like this is going to be. I feel like this is a Harbaugh spot because I think Josh Harris is going to want to make a splash hire. It's pretty historic franchise. Vrabel could be an option, but my gut is this is kind of that they think that this probably needs to be because they've got talent on defense. They were terrible this year. Kind of what you get when you agree to let Jack Del Rio be your coordinator. But they've got talent on defense, so they could probably, just hire a defensive coordinator, but they need someone to fix the off. They're going to have a rookie quarterback. There's no question about that. They're going to go back to Sam Howell. Yeah. So I think they're going to lean offense. So I think this is the Harbaugh spot.
I like that call out with Harbaugh. I think it's, Josh Harris is one of those owners that will be able to make the deal that Harbaugh will have to consider because he, like you said, I think it makes perfect sense to me that they'll look to make a splash and reset everything that people know about the Washington Commanders.
He would be like 35 miles from his brother too, so that would be interesting.
Yeah, that would be. I think I currently think I think Harbaugh looks elsewhere. I'm going to go with Clint Kubiak, the passing game coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. I'm sticking with that 49ers connection with Adam Peters that you mentioned. Again, he's young, and that's the hot thing nowadays. He's like 36 years old, and that you could say that is too young for him to be there, but we've seen owners like that, and we've seen owners make that work. Josh Harris, we don't know what Josh Harris's MO is yet. We really don't. So I agree with you that I think they go on the opposite side of the ball. Harbaugh makes a ton of sense, but I think he goes elsewhere, as we're going to talk about in a little bit. But either way, this is going to be a fun video to look back on when we're wrong about the team.
But all of them? Yeah.
Except for this one, because I think we're both going to be on point about this one. Las Vegas. There's only one way for them to go. They've had to go through the process. They have to when it hires an interim, when they have interim head coaches. They still have to go through the Rooney Rule process and everything that goes with the interview. But if Antonio Pierce is not the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders next year, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know what the thinking could be otherwise.
Especially when Mark Davis has kind of swung for the fences with his last two coaching hires, and they've been absolute disasters, right? Gruden he had to get rid of and had to pay him $10 million a year. Yeah, basically almost $100 million to do nothing.
Plus a lot.
And then Josh McDaniels was a predictable disaster. They need to stay in-house. They need to do the right thing. You've already heard like Max Crosby and Devontae Adams saying, if he doesn't get the job, we want out. You cannot lose Max Crosby off this team. So I think they will do the right thing and hire Antonio Pierce.
It was night and day the difference with Antonio Pierce to Josh McDaniel. It's just
a culture change.
And it's rare. We get to see it time to time, but when we do, it's really something. Seeing how much a culture change is needed within a team that actually spurs such tangible results. Of immediately starting off with the drubbing of Pierce's former team, the New York Giants, and just the emotion that they played the rest of the way, 4-4 under Antonio Pierce, with losses to really good playoff teams, or at least playoff teams. And I believe it was Miami.
With Aiden O'Connell at quarterback.
Yeah, with Aiden O'Connell at quarterback while getting shut out in one game. It's there's a lot of things to like about Antonio Pierce, and I just hope he gets the chance. And obviously, it's somebody that skipped all the phases. I've listened to New York radio about Antonio Pierce, and it is interesting that he jumped from linebacker coach to head coach. He didn't call plays for defense. He didn't call play for offense. That is something he's never done. So that is something that if he doesn't get the job, that's the only thing I could point to. But I have full confidence that he will. It's risking the entire locker room.
Yeah, I've been saying for a long time the NFL needs to get back to like CEO level coaches, right? Just
yes.
We've gone too far down we need a hot offensive coordinator road, and we've kind of talked about a couple of those guys, but I think in general you need to kind of look at these like John Harbaugh in Baltimore. Just he was a special teams coordinator before he got that job. Just guys who can bring in good coordinators and just oversee a program, oversee the organization, oversee the culture, oversee everything. I think we need to do more of that. I think Antonio Pierce would do a really good job of that. So, yeah, he absolutely deserves that job.
And speaking of a place that needs a change and a place that could use a Jim Harbaugh type, and that's where I think this number one landing spot is. This is where I think is it's probably not the most appealing. The more I think about it, it's probably not. You're probably right that it was Atlanta. But the Los Angeles Chargers, I understand that they are in a cap hell right now, right? They have to figure out what they're doing with a lot of their players, and they could figure it out fairly easily. They're going to have to make a lot of tough decisions with veterans on the roster. You have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Khalil Mack, all taking up huge chunks of cap room. Corey Linsley, their center, is now retiring. So that's going to be someone else you need to replace. Nothing out of Quentin Johnston from last year as a rookie. But Justin Herbert's there. And that is such a difference that every other team on this list doesn't have. Nobody on this list has a Justin Herbert. Nobody on this list has a locked-in quarterback for 2024 outside of Bryce Young, and I guess probably Dak Prescott, I would say, has a locked-in starting job. So it's so rare to be able to come into a coaching situation. I think that's what Jim Harbaugh chooses, and chooses to work with Justin Herbert here. And the interesting thing about it to me is I think Houston showed that you don't need a top 5 receiver to be able to surround your quarterback with help. All you need is a few good pieces. And I think Justin Herbert can make the most out of those few pieces. And I think Jim Harbaugh is going to be a big selling point for a lot of players out there. I think he did great things with San Francisco. I think his relationship around the league is going to be great. And I think that's exactly what the Chargers need, and I think that's what they go for.
I think this is a spot where, we just talked about needing a CEO. This is where you really need a CEO, because you're going to have to tear this team down. You have the building block. You have Justin Herbert. You have a top 5 pick, unlike Carolina. So you have the tools to kind of be able to rebuild quickly, but you're going to have to tear down. You're going to have to get rid of Khalil Mack. You're going to have to get yourself cap compliant, basically. And you don't want to do a New Orleans thing where you just kind of drag it out and try to stay competitive for 8 years, because they're not competitive. They have a top 5 pick. They need to tear it down. You could see Keenan Allen in a new spot next year. You probably will see Khalil Mack in a new spot next year. Joey Bosa could be in a new spot next year. They have a bad cap spot. They've got some easy, I shouldn't say easy cuts. They've got some easy places to clear cap space, but they're going to be tough cuts because they're really good players. So, yeah, I think you're going to have to really tear it down, but you could rebuild quickly. So,
and I think that's what Jim Harbaugh
he wants to coach in LA, because the problem is, right, they share their building and they have no fan base because they abandoned San Diego. So that's kind of the sketchy thing, is you don't have a culture at all. you don't have a home field advantage at all. So I think that's going to be a real turnoff for some of these coaching prospects.
That's a fair point, and I don't have a counter to it at all. But I will
Justin
say
Herbert is the counter to that.
Yes, Justin Herbert is always my counter to that, to be honest. But listen, they may share it, but how long is Stafford going to be sticking around in LA? How long are we going to be watching Stafford? I don't know. My point is, I think Jim Harbaugh. Sorry, go.
No, that's a market that doesn't care about football. So you're never going to have a huge home field event. Like, do you watch those Chiefs games in LA, and you have more Chiefs fans there? Like, when the Packers go there, you're going to have more Packers fans. When the Steelers go there, you're going to have more Steelers fans in the building than the Chargers fans.
Is that also a result of them being perennially okay at best? Is it a result of having uninspiring coaching and uninspiring play and horrific defense? I think wherever
cursed.
What?
Just being generally cursed.
Yeah, being generally cursed as well, with injuries and kicking and everything, just in general with playoffs. I think wherever Harbaugh goes, he is there for the long run. And like you said, they need to tear it down. I think Harbaugh is going to tear it all down. And I think this is the team they're going to build around Justin Herbert. I think wherever he goes, he has as long a leash as we've seen. He has that Gruden type of leash, which even Gruden didn't last that long, but he lasted probably longer than he could have. And I think Harbaugh's going to do a much better job than Gruden did. So I think he's going to be there for the long run. I think they back it up for him. They pay him quite a lot of money to handle the mess that they have in LA with the jewel in the middle in Justin Herbert. Who do you think?
So real quick before we move on, just getting back to the Dallas thing.
Oh, please.
Adam Schefter just tweeted, throughout the season, sources believe Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy would always be judged by how Dallas's last game of the season went. Maybe the odds of him coming back are closer to what you said than what I said.
Okay. I'll add another one in from Ian Rapport of Jerry Jones declining to comment on the specifics of his looming decision on Mike McCarthy, who has 1 year left on his contract. Jones did say that this is as bad a loss as he can remember. Floored, he said. So I think I think he is so gone. He is so gone. It's not even funny. I think Jerry Jones will buy him a limo, not rent to him a limo, will buy him a limo just to get him out. Oh my goodness, what a sensational end in Dallas to a movie that we all knew the ending 2 years ago. So what's your prediction for LA?
I really do. I'm going to say Vrabel, but I don't have a real good feel for where they go. It could be Ben Johnson, right? It could be a guy who just wants to work with Justin Herbert. But yeah, I'm not real sure where they go. I don't think that's as attractive a job as I think most people think.
Yeah, I understand that perspective. And Vrabel would make sense too, right? The Chargers' number one problem this season was that secondary. That was horrifically bad. And we know what Vrabel can do with the defense. And he's a lot. It feels like the Staley hire, but with safety of knowing what you get. And they didn't have that with Staley of just, trying to fix that same problem, but actually trying to get results out of it. And on the topic of Vrabel, Tennessee, the last one here, Arthur Smith. But Tennessee out there, whoever joins this team is inheriting. Oh, not
a mess.
Great. Not great stuff. DeAndre Hopkins probably out the door. Derrick Henry out the door. Jeffrey Simmons is going to need to get paid if he hasn't been. I forgot if he got paid last offseason. And really not much else. It's quite the poor situation. You don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be. You don't know if Will Levis gets another chance to keep that job. And they're not bad enough to have a top 5 pick.
Yeah, I think it's clearly Levis's job, but if you're a candidate going in there, do you like that? Is that a good thing?
I don't think it's clearly Levis's job. I think if they could identify someone at wherever they're picking, like 8 or 9 or something like that, because of that last win. Yeah, the last win threw them down a few spots. They could easily take a quarterback there. But again, you run into the same situation of does he have remotely enough help to make him worth taking at this point of the time of the franchise?
Yeah, it's almost like Carolina where you've got a disaster offensive line, and that's where you kind of need to build. So they're going to be able to do that. They have the draft pick, and they're going to be in a position to take a Fashanu or a Joe Alt or something like that. So there's going to be options to improve that line, but then do you have the quarterback, and is Will Levis the kind of guy who keeps you from drafting another quarterback when you should be looking for a quarterback? I think that's the danger there. So yeah, I think this is kind of in almost worse than Carolina in that it's a bad spot, but you don't have the owner with super deep pockets. And now you've got, the reporting coming out of there was that, the kind of ownership, like Amy Strunk, was really kind of meddling where she shouldn't have been. And maybe there's a real lack of communication with the coaching staff, between the coaching staff and the GM and the ownership, and things kind of got ugly at the end there. So that may be something that, a young coach looks at and said, maybe I don't want part of that to be part of that dysfunction. So it'll be interesting. I don't have a feel for who ends up going there.
This is where I think Dan Quinn ends up. If it's not Seattle, this is where I think Dan Quinn ends up. I think it's just the perfect bridge type of coach that even if they end up using him as the scapegoat of what Tennessee might be until they actually get to where they're going to be, I do think Dan Quinn has lost a little bit of a market today. I do think that people are going to overreact to it. If you consider an overreaction, I do think people are going to react to this. And I think that that's going to leave the Titans as somebody that, like you said, not many coaches are going to be wanting to be with the Tennessee Titans. And a lot of what to be fair to Amy Strunk, the Titans owner, I will say that I read the Athletic article, and it did sound like, I don't know which side you want to put the blame on. She was kind of rubbed the wrong way by.
I think there's a lot of blame to go around on all cases.
Yeah. It was Mike Vrabel in the whole Ring of Honor situation of being in the going to the Patriots during his bye week and saying that this is like one of the greatest, most special places in the world and all that. And that didn't sit well at home, according to the Athletic and whoever.
He wasn't wrong.
He's not wrong, and she's honestly not that wrong either. It's not quite the thing you say while you're the head coach of another AFC team. Not quite the move. But either way, this is where I think Dan Quinn ends up. I think he tries to make the most out of defense, just like Vrabel did. I don't think Strunk had a problem with Vrabel's coaching as much as she did with Vrabel himself. And if Dan Quinn is different in terms of just personality, I don't know. I don't know either of the men. I think it's the safe type of hire that Strunk's going to be almost forced into picking because, like you said, there's not a lot of options out there. Maybe Steve Wilkes. The
guy we haven't talked about is Todd Monken.
We have not talked about
that. May be a spot where he ends up.
That's a good point. That's a good call out.
Does Baltimore lose both their coordinators like Philly did last year?
Oh, Mike McDonald. I don't think Mike McDonald leaves, but he is fantastic. I think he gets one more year in Baltimore, and then he'll be the big name next year. But that's a good call out too. It could honestly be either of those coordinators, and I wouldn't blink an eye.
I could see it being either one of those guys.
Yeah, that's a very good call out. I like that quite a lot. Now, one of the spots that we do know the answer to, and we're going to be wrapping up somewhat soon because we're already running along with all these holes. New England, we have a spot. Was it Mike Vrabel? No, they actually had it in the contract the entire time that I think none of us really knew for sure. We all heard the talk, but we never knew the contract in there. That Jerod Mayo would be the next head coach, and so he is, of the New England Patriots with Bill Belichick out the door. So, Jerod Mayo, linebacker coach, DC turned head coach out here. And the Belichick disciple continues. Will we see a Belichick tree head coach succeed? And this time in New England, no less.
Yeah, the fascinating thing is, like we alluded to, is does he just clear house and bring in his own guys and get rid of the Belichick tree and just kind of cut that out and kind of start over? Maybe with some former Patriots, but getting rid of the Bill O'Brien types, the Joe Judge types, the Matt Patricia type, who's already in Philly, so he's already gone. But I would assume Belichick's kid's going with him wherever he goes. He's probably not staying there. But it'd be fascinating to see who their coordinators end up being because that's going to be really interesting. Does he just kind of bring in his own guys, or does he kind of fall back into the Belichick, quote, Patriot way?
And the very interesting thing that we're going to be talking about on future shows, I'm sure, we're going to see a new quarterback here. We have a top 3 pick here in New England. most likely going to be Drake May or whoever they perceive to be the second best quarterback on the board, assuming the second or third, depending on how the picks go in front of him. So there's so many question marks still in New England of this team that is bereft of talent and not in the
Good
greatest.
talent on D.
They do, but even then
They have defensive talent.
They lost Judon this year and early on, and they really never recovered from that. They have Christian Barmore in the
Chris
center.
Gonzalez is really good, and he got hurt.
And they lost Christian Gonzalez as well. That's fair. Christian Gonzalez is having a great rookie year.
So there's talent there. So they can be good defensively pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's what you expect Mayo to get the
most
out of them. You expect Mayo to get the most out of that defense. That's what he's there. That's what he is known for, is getting the most out of that linebacker room that has barely received any investment, yet continues to produce solid play through Juwan Bentley and others every single year, and has resulted in guys like Andrew Van Ginkel getting good roles in Miami and so forth. I'm getting into IDP talk now. Also, some other news that I'm sure Joel will want to hear. Based on EPA per pass play, Jordan Love just had the most efficient game for any quarterback in a game this season, which came in his first playoff start on the road as a 7-point underdog.
When they started the fourth quarter, he was like 15 of 18 for like 280. He was averaging like 14 yards per attempt. He averaged almost 10 last week. He's been he is on a roll, man. I said he's in the matrix right now. He is just killing it. He is seeing the defense. He has been really like the last, like going back to Carolina, 4 weeks. He's been like the last month. He's just been on another level.
The only thing that bothers me is that I bet before the year on the Packers winning the NFC North, and I honestly think they might be the best team in the NFC North, and they didn't win the division.
I think they are right now.
Yeah, I mean, with Jordan Love
right now.
It's this team, like you said before, without Aaron Jones, this offense really stuttered. I think it really hindered that leap that Jordan Love showed he was ready to make in week one. And then all of a sudden we saw kind of taper off once Aaron Jones kind of left that, and they tried running it with A.J. Dillon. Didn't work. But as you see on the screen here, coaching carousel, last one, not head coaches here, but we will have new offensive coordinators in Chicago and Jacksonville. They have not been hired yet, right? I believe.
Correct.
Yeah. So we are two important vacancies to watch for, because obviously Chicago has a very open-ended system. I believe that the firing of Luke Getsy would suggest that they are leaning towards Caleb Williams and not towards keeping Justin Fields. I don't know if I'm reading into that too much. Your eyebrows tell me I might be.
Not necessarily. I just think I wouldn't be so sure that if they do move on from Fields that Williams is the pick there.
Oh,
because I don't know.
What are we doing here?
Hear me out. Is he the kind of guy who's going to thrive in that environment?
Who is? I mean, is anyone better?
I think Drake may be the better prospect for them, just because Caleb Williams played in Oklahoma and Southern California. Does he really want to go to Chicago? Is he going to thrive in Chicago? Could he be all he can be in Chicago?
I think with DJ Moore, he can be. I think he can find a way.
I'm just talking more about the weather. And can he be a cold weather quarterback? Because he's going to have to be.
I mean, I don't think that's going to be enough to sway the Bears scouting staff off of him. I think they're going to be willing to run that chance and see what happens. We might have had the same questions about Tua. He still went to the Dolphins like we all thought he was going to go to. And sure, maybe you could point that out as a reason to maybe care about it more now, of the cold weather quarterbacks or not. But, we've seen – I don't think it's necessarily the stickiest of stats of Lamar Jackson came from Louisville,
Yeah, Baltimore's a pretty temperate climate. It's not Chicago.
That's not the same as Chicago. It's not the windy city. I know.
I mean, Mahomes has done fine in Kansas City, and Kansas City's a pretty tough place to play. See last night, so I wouldn't rule it out. I just think that's kind of I think that's something to keep your eye on. I wouldn't rule Drake May out as the pick to the Bears. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see that they talked about Kubiak going there. He's had an interview, I think, or he's going to get interviewed. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of coordinator they hire, what kind of scheme they're looking at, because Eberflus is obviously like to run the ball a lot. And he is a defensive guy. So that hiring will be very interesting. Jacksonville, I mean, you're probably just going to get the Doug Peterson offense.
You are.
But I think Press Taylor was kind of a scapegoat a little bit, but that's the way that job goes. So I don't think much is going to change in Jacksonville.
I won't lie to you.
Whoever they hire.
I didn't even realize that Jacksonville fired their OC until you put it on the show, Doc. I must have missed that news because it wasn't one of those vacancies that I was looking for. I was expecting a change in Chicago, and I was waiting to see what they would do with anyone associated with Justin Fields, and I was curious. Jacksonville, I 1,000% with you. This is throwing a poor man under the bus that is driven by Doug Peterson, and then run back over, and hopefully, they get another shot somewhere else because there were a lot of issues with Jacksonville this year, and it all starts with the head coach potentially. So either way, that is the coaching vacancies. And I know, Joel, you put a few trades in the chat here. We are running a little bit long. I know people are going to want to watch Sunday Night Football. I got playoff game, a great one at that of Rams and Lions. Did you want to pull up any one of these trades, or you want to sign off?
Let's go to the last one, the draft one.
And I think it's a good one because people never know what to do with draft picks. And here we have 12 teams, Superflex, tight end premium, the 109, 2 24 thirds, and a 24 fourth for the 105. So trading 2 thirds and a fourth to move up 4 spots. And I love that deal, honestly. Quite a lot.
I have the 105 in this league, and I am holding tight. I am not moving. Like, there are 6 potentially elite players in the 3 quarterbacks, plus Marvin Harrison, obviously, Malik Neighbors, and Brock Bowers. This is a 2-point tight end premium, a full point tight end premium. So 2.0 tight end premium. So Brock Bowers may go top 3 in this league. He may go before the second 2 quarterbacks after Caleb Williams. So with 6 elite players, I'm not moving off of the 105. I'm not moving down into a very tenuous territory for a couple thirds and a fourth. So I think that's the big overarching lesson here is that these top 6 picks are going to be in Superflex, going to be very highly coveted. So don't give them away unless you're getting a pretty good ransom for them.
And it goes the other way as well. This is as good of a time as it's going to be to try to jump into that top 5, top 6 before people start counting it down like you just did. A lot of people are still.
And I'm going to try to be actively getting, because I don't know if Malik Neighbors has the kind of, I think he should be treated as close to Marvin Harrison because I think he would be a better prospect
right here.
Like the entire 22 class.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm very high on him. So if he's going to be a guy, if you're in like a high tight end premium where Bowers is going to be a high pick, and you can slide into that 6 pick to where you can. I mean, Neighbors may go higher depending on the league, but you're going to have a choice of Neighbors or a quarterback. That's a really valuable pick. So I'm going to, in the spots where I have like the 107, I'm going to see what it takes to get up to the 106, out of the 108. So props to this guy. I think that's a nice trade, but there's no way I'm doing that as the guy who has the one. I need much more than that.
And to the point that we've been drilling for the last few months, the draft class is always a little bit worse than we expect it to be. For the most part, that's how it ends up, of depth at least. And we saw a few people go back to college this week that we may not have expected, especially at running back. I believe you're gonna have to remind me, but because I'm actually forgetting the names of the big ones. But there were big names that returned to college this past time.
And Emeka Egbuka went back to Ohio State, so that took a big chunk out of the wide receiver market. That was very interesting. Has Travion Henderson declared? I
think Travion Henderson is returning as well.
I mean, Quinshon Judkins went to. I mean, I live in Northeast Ohio, so I'm in big Buckeye country. So Judkins went to Ohio State, so I can't imagine that Henderson is going to stay there. But he hasn't declared yet. So
he's returning. He came out about that. I remember hearing that. Yeah, so he's returning to the Buckeyes, or at the very least. To college football, who knows what happens from there, but and it is kind of nuts to me. But there's a few guys like that, and this was already a weak running back class, and we do not have a 101 right now. I think has Blake Corum declared? I believe he did today, right?
I don't think he had eligibility. I don't think he needed to declare.
Isn't his? Oh, okay. Well, he declared today. I thought he had one more year potentially, but either way, it doesn't matter.
I could be wrong about that.
It doesn't matter because he's declared, and so did JJ McCarthy. But either way, my point in bringing all this up is that we always have question marks in the seconds, third, fourth rounds, especially when you get to the back ends of those rounds. So you can pull those together and get into that elite top 6. Do it. Do it. Trade the red flags for green flags. That's a life lesson, people, kids, everyone out there.
Yeah, I think another big picture thing is earlier on, because this was such a highly anticipated draft class, I think people are trading for seconds to get more shares of this class. With the guys going back to school, those seconds take a big hit because this class becomes a lot shallower. So that's going to burn a few people, I think.
Yep, and then you factor in just we got free agency. They're going to take up spots, and teams, they're looking at the defense. It's a very good defensive class. That's the big thing about this one, is the defensive line and so forth.
Very good offensive line class too.
Very good offensive line class. One of the better ones of recent year. I was listening to Brian Baldinger talking about it. But yeah, so that is what we got for you today. Went through all of those head coaching vacancies, and in the time, and a little bit later, you can always come back, hop around to the timestamps that I will be filling in after this video for you guys to check out and all that. So be sure to follow Club Fantasy FFL at Club Fantasy FFL, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all the good stuff. Amazing shows that is always here, and amazing articles that people like Joel write, and you should 1000% check out. Joel, any final partings as the playoff winning Green Bay Packer representative?
3 words: go Pack, go.
I see that.
On to San Francisco.
I where you are opening as 10-point underdogs, by the way.
Are we really? Ooh, the disrespect.
You are opening as 10-point underdogs, which is, I believe, no records or anything. But either way, 10-point underdogs, you're going to be an interesting one, and we're going to be watching it ourselves, I'm sure, at some point soon, next week, I'd say. Either way, thank you all for tuning in. We have the Steelers coming on tomorrow. I'm excited for it.
Good luck to your squad.
Yeah, hey, man. Listen, snow can't keep us down. We're in the air today. We're going to be there.
Let's make it 2 7 seeds.
They're going to get killed. Follow Joel at the Joel Wirth. You can follow myself at Michael__Sicoli. And we will see you next week because I believe, Joel, we're returning to weekly episodes is the plan on Sunday nights here at the Dynasty After Party. Is that something we were thinking about?
Sure, why not?
Okay, you can see.
Let's see when the Packers play. Let's see when they get.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's see how the Packers and Steelers face each other in the Super Bowl in a few months. Either way,
let's do it.
Thank you all for tuning in. Remember, Dynasty is like a disco ball, keeps on spinning year round. So join the club every Sunday now. We are back to every Sunday now at 7:30 p.m. Eastern here at Club Fantasy FFL. Be healthy, be safe, have a good one.